Ringing out across the land, hundreds of town criers marked the start of VE Day with an official proclamation.
80 years ago, the United Kingdom and its allies celebrated victory in Europe.
80 years ago today, crowds poured onto the streets in their hundreds of thousands in relief and joy at the end of 6 years of conflict in Europe.
Long live the cause of freedom. God save the King.
At the centre of those celebrations in 1945 were the royal family, including the young Princess Elizabeth and Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Today, as they did 80 years ago, the Prime Minister led politicians to a service of thanksgiving. At Westminster Abbey, they were joined by the King and Queen, senior members of the royal family, and 78 of the few remaining veterans of World War II, many of them now more than 100 years old. Then, on the stroke of midday, the nation fell silent to pay tribute to the generation that sacrificed so much for freedom and peace. Among those at Westminster Abbey, 99-year-old naval veteran Thomas Cuthbert.
It reminds me of all the people what's been lost during the war, and my family and everyone. And I'm doing it for everybody. I'm appreciating for all the people who's helped to keep this going.
A candle of peace was lit by the great-great-grandson of Winston Churchill, a reminder to those generations who can only imagine the darkness of war, that our freedom was fought for and won through the bravery and sacrifice of many millions. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
The celebrations and commemorations continue into this evening. We'll hear from our royal editor in a moment, but first to Stacey Foster at the National Memorial Arboretum. Stacey, we heard the silence there in Martha's piece. What can we expect later?
Well, there is a whole day of events planned here at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. The 2-minute silence was marked at midday, and then very quickly we had a host of veterans arriving for what is expected to be a wonderful tea party that's planned for 2 o'clock this afternoon. And on the guest list, Britain's oldest veteran, aged 110. I've also just had the pleasure of meeting a married couple, Roy and Kathleen, who have been married for 74 years, telling me their stories about that day 80 years ago. And then this afternoon, there are preparations underway for a special remembrance service that will be taking place here at the centre of the National Memorial Arboretum. And some of those veterans will be down here this afternoon and will be on stage as well, telling their stories of VE Day.
What a pleasure indeed. Stacey, thank you very much. To Chris Shipp now at Westminster Abbey. Chris, much to celebrate, and yet today there are conflicts around the world.
Yes, you're right, Nina. And you know, that's a point that everyone I've spoken to this week has reflected on. I think it was most expertly demonstrated, if you like, by the forces of the Ukraine military marching in that procession on Bank Holiday Monday down to Buckingham Palace. A reminder, of course, that 80 years on, there is a different aggressor and a different country that's been invaded. And also here at this service, which is finished now, the King and Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales have left. We heard from both a 100-year-old veteran who gave words inside Westminster Abbey, but also a 10-year-old, the great-great-grandson of Winston Churchill. A reminder that 80 years on, it is now the responsibility of the younger generation to remember what happened in the Second World War. Tonight there is a concert just around the corner from here. The King will be there. A poignant moment for him as well. Remember, it was his grandfather, King George VI, who gave an address to the nation at 9 p.m. on VE Day in 1945.